worked out good. Yeah, it was really good.
Loved it, and we were so glad because they said inside, and I've been in a lot of.
Welcome, everyone, to the Route 6A Village Center Community Meeting. I'm Yarmouth Town Planner Kathy Williams. I know that a lot of you have been very familiar with the meetings and the work that we've been doing on Route 6A, but we've really been concentrating on the Village Center, which is essentially from Gingerbread Lane to just east of Minden Lane. We've had a lot of meetings with the businesses and the residents in the area, working on the development of our concept plans. What we're doing this evening is we're trying to present get input from all of you guys, from a general community audience, on how you feel about the concept design so that we can continue moving forward with the development of the project. We are fortunate enough at the special town meeting in 2024 to get some additional design funds for VHB to continue with their work, so we are making some progress moving forward. We've also met with Sarah Korjeff. She is the Historic Preservation Specialist with the Cape Cod Commission, and we also met with John Stewart, he's here this evening, from Old Kings Highway, to get a little ideas of maybe some historical context and some elements that we could bring into the project. So what we're really trying to do is to solve as many of the functional issues that exist in the Village Center while still keeping that historic character and context that we all enjoy. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Steve Rhodes from VHB.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm also here with my colleague tonight, Michael Kushman. He's a landscape architect in my office, so he's here to help me take notes and answer any specific questions folks might have on any landscape architecture elements that are being considered for the project. Get used to the mouse wheel here. So we're going to talk about the project area, where exactly are the improvements proposed on a kind of high level. What's the current status, existing issues that we're trying to improve upon, and some of the design objectives. We're going to do a quick recap of stakeholder input so far. It's happened throughout the engagement program. And we'll look at the plans, improvement details, costs, and next steps, and then we'll end with a Q&A session. So I asked to hold questions to the end, and we're here as long as needed for that part. So the project limits are roughly from Gingerbread Lane to Minden Lane. We've expanded the limits slightly to the west since last time we held a public forum for these plans. So it's just capturing the Urology Associates site driveway, improving the roadway in front of that frontage there. The concept design has been going on from the summer of 2023 to present day. We've had 3 rounds of public outreach and stakeholder engagement. This is the 4th. As Kathy mentioned, the survey and design funding has been approved at special town meeting, so we have a mechanism to continue the design moving forward. And then Mass DOT, got some good news from them at the turn of the new year. They approved the project for potential federal and state construction funding. So that was a little bit of a question mark the last time we met at the select board meeting in October. And now I've kind of solidified the answer there that the project is eligible for some good support and backing with construction funding. It's a long list of existing issues. To me, this is a sign of a potential really good project to address these things. So starting out with the kind of focus on the pedestrians, there's inconsistent and somewhat poorly defined sidewalks throughout the project limits. The crosswalk locations are fairly limited, so you have just the one currently across 6A near Sandyside Lane. The number of driveways presents a bit of an issue, and the kind of meandering roadway edge kind of mixes with that undefined sidewalk area to create a bit of a issue for people with any visual disabilities to make their way safely along the road edge. So that's something we're trying to improve upon. Stepping in from a vehicular perspective, there's obviously, as a lot of people know, no real defined parking spaces. There's just a road shoulder in a lot of cases. There's inconsistent and multiple different types of signage that speak to parking. So we're going to look at improving upon that. And then businesses are obviously a big part of the village. So there's fairly narrow curb cuts to a lot of these businesses' driveways, combined with the lack of marking for parking. There's sometimes cars creeping up on the businesses' driveways, which makes sight distance hard to see when people are trying to come in and out of those businesses. We're going to look to improve on that for sure. And then we've always heard throughout since the start that speeds that cars are traveling through the village are kind of a big concern. So we're looking to do what we can to slow people down as they come through the village. as Kathy said, I think number one, these improvements are looking to keep the historical context of the village in place. We don't want to put anything in just for the sake of it that wouldn't match kind of the character of the area. In doing that, we can improve the sidewalks. We can improve the driveway crossing areas, especially across Minden Lane, which is probably the longest stretch a pedestrian would have to cross from one segment of sidewalk to another. And we're going to look to have a crosswalk program that is more defined, improve the crossings that are there today, add more so there's better options for people who want to cross from the north side to the south side without having to walk all the way to the end of the village or cross without a crossing. For the driveway curb cuts, we're going to look to provide a kind of cue that there's no parking at the edge of the driveways by installing flush bump outs, either with striping or with some kind of colored pavement surface that can give people a clue that that's just meant for kind of the sight distance area for people leaving the driveway. And streetscape elements, nothing's been set yet, but we're considering lighting, seating, various pieces that can kind of enhance the feel of the village. And then we want to come up with a parking signage plan that alerts people that there's plenty of parking on the south side businesses behind the storefronts. So we can work with Mass DOT on developing and the historic stakeholders on developing some signage that'll work to kind of give people a refreshed plan as to where to look for parking if they're not going to get parking on 6A itself. Somewhat unseen in the end, but there is a number of drainage structures out there today, and some of them are somewhat in the wrong spot, so there's some puddling. So we're going to look to kind of update a modern drainage infrastructure program as part of this project. So there'll be a lot of structures going in underground, tying into the existing system that Mass DOT currently maintains, and improving upon that. So I mentioned the 4 prior public workshops and/or public meetings that have happened. Throughout those, we've heard some common themes about general support for improving the kind of current state of the village from a pedestrian and parking perspective. Definitely heard wanting to make the crosswalks safer. And there's been some questions about exactly how we're going to do that. So we're kind of still hearing those and working through a plan to get the best crosswalk improvement that we can do within the context. Minden Lane itself, as I mentioned, creating a better functional driveway crossing and roadway entrance off of 6A for both pedestrians and for vehicles that are using that roadway. We heard a lot about emergency access, and we are considering putting in the space between the road and the sidewalk on the north side, putting a reinforced kind of grass system, which can be able to support emergency vehicles or cars if people need to pull off the roadway. The roadway width is not going to change in a major way as part of this project. So there's still going to be pinch points where if emergency services, ambulances, fire trucks are coming through the road, you may need to pull off the road. We're not going to take away the ability to do that with these improvements. And then really just trying to promote what we can to get some vehicle speeds reduced through the village, really just putting these improvements in place to create a sense of place, kind of refresh the feel of the village. And sometimes that leads to people taking more notice that this pedestrian is present. That's something that we won't really know until we're done. But Mass DOT has expressed the potential to support a speed study once the improvements are made to come back and then look at can we potentially lower the speed limit after the improvements are constructed. So speaking of Mass DOT, so far they've been on board with the concepts that we've presented to them. At one point we were considering parking on the north side of the road. They kind of decided that wouldn't be the best idea just because of the layout of the road. Just feels a little bit too narrow to have parking on both sides. So we heard that, and the current plans are showing only parallel parking on the south side of the road. They talked about the road section with us, which is going to be an 11-foot travel lane and a 2-foot shoulder. The south side is going to have a slightly wider travel lane because it's adjacent to the parallel parking spaces, so you have a little more space to negotiate there. And then sidewalks, we can look at anything from a 5-foot to a 6-foot sidewalk. Most likely going to be 5 feet on the north side and 6 feet on the south side. This is that same high-level view of the project corridor with some improvements put on it. Bit hard to see, but we do have some more kind of zoomed in images coming up on the next few slides. But in general, we're talking about the road edge being improved with a restored antique granite curb on the south side of the road. That'll help define the sidewalk area from the parking spaces. The sidewalk gets reconstructed on both the north and south side, and there can be a refreshed kind of green strip where it's available between the road and the sidewalk. I mentioned already improving crosswalks. On this plan, you can kind of see the dark black lines across 6A on the left and the right. Those are the current location of the two proposed crossings. We'll get into more details on that in the next few slides. As I mentioned, the parking is on the south side of the road. The improvements to Minden Lane are shown here with some striping for parking and some striping to define the road area. And then a different material from just asphalt for the pedestrian walkway, so people know where they should be walking and vehicles know where they should be looking for people crossing there. And lighting is being considered. So no plans. This is the common theme. Nothing set in stone right now, but we're considering lighting between the crosswalks. That'll be a pedestrian scale lighting, not a highway height, 100-foot tall light, 50-foot tall light on a utility pole. It's going to be a 12 to 14 feet or in that range high light post. We can also supplement that. We've looked at some new ideas about lighting bollards, trying to fit something in with the historic context of what was, once the village area with horse travel and things like that. We've heard some comments about hitching posts, and there's some different options we can look at for kind of meeting that lighting spec. For crosswalks, we're going to take a step a little bit further out and expand down past Vesper Lane on the left. There's an existing crosswalk that Mass DOT put in, so that's there today and functioning with ADA ramps. In the middle of the slide, the red crosswalk there is the current crosswalk just to the east of, or essentially at the intersection with North Sandyside Lane. And then on the right side of the screen, we have the blue crosswalk, which is a proposed crosswalk. So what we do when we look at citing these crosswalks is try to have some consistency between the spacing of the crosswalks. You don't want anyone on one side of the road to be having to walk a lot further than anyone else to get to a crosswalk. It tends to lead to people just crossing on their own wherever they want to. So we want to put these in at kind of a really thought out spacing interval to make it useful, to keep that utilization of the crosswalk up, and just have better driver compliance. When they're all kind of bunched together, drivers can tend to start to ignore them selectively. So we don't want that happening, of course.
Where is the proposed one?
The proposed crosswalk is just to the west of Minden Lane. So it's right in front of the Lighthouse Keeper's Pantry or thereabouts. Getting into a little bit more of the design details, what we think about when we make these decisions. The orange lines are the potential crosswalk locations. We're currently debating the idea of putting the crosswalk that's next to North Sandyside Lane to the west of Gingerbread Lane. In doing so, we'd introduce a few more vehicle conflict points, the red arrows there. So we'd have people turning left out of the Urology Associates parking lot, people turning right out of Gingerbread Lane, and then both westbound and eastbound movements on 6A. Whereas at North Sandyside Lane, you only have the 3 conflicts with people turning right out of the Sandyside Lane. May also be less vehicles, per hour turning out of Sandyside Lane compared to the Urology Associates office, and then the 2 opposing directions of Route 6A travel. These next few slides are getting a bit into the kind of the zoomed in improvements here, working from west to east. So here we see the current location of the Sandyside Lane crosswalk and pedestrian curb ramps. ADA compliant ramps and sidewalks are proposed. The parking stalls are kind of in black on the south side of the road or the bottom of the road. And those are bookended by the striping to kind of produce some sight distance space near the driveways. In the middle of the corridor, we get a lot more green strip space on the north side of the road. So that's kind of where we're considering putting the reinforced grass paver system for anyone to pull off onto, just to avoid rutting of the grass. Grass can still grow up through it, but it's supportive of periodic vehicles being on that. And then we see the crosswalk in front of the Lighthouse Keeper's Pantry on the right side of the image, again, supported by updated pedestrian curb ramps, ADA compliance. And lastly, we have the Minden Lane improvements. which consists of that kind of sidewalk material being extended across the driveway apron itself, so it won't just be a sea of pavement. Striping, Minden Lane, with some gore line, kind of thicker pavement striping on either side, and then defining those parking spots. We could potentially work with the owners on adding some signage, if people are parking head in, to say, make sure you check for pedestrians behind you, things of that nature before you back out. And one thing I haven't mentioned yet, but I just remind myself here at the last bullet on the right, landscaping. We don't have any defined landscaping plans yet. It's a little bit too early to put that down on paper, but we're definitely going to consider where we could propose some new street trees or shrubs or any kind of low maintenance landscaping to kind of help beautify the area. Some of the design details. This is a look at that parking bump out that I described. It could be defined by a stamped colored asphalt, so it's a separate material color than the regular roadway asphalt. We'll look at it. We could inset a granite curb to kind of define the edge of that, so kind of as a guide way, you should be driving around the granite curb instead of over it. And then the sidewalk is adjacent to that. So it's got its vertical separation, so there's no kind of mixing of roadway and ped space there. Right, keep it very defined and vertically separated. This is a kind of two-part slide. One is the proposed edge treatment that we're looking at on the north side of the roadway, which is the T100 style curbing. It's granite curbing. It's a big block of curb, but it's fairly kind of low impact on the surface. It essentially amounts to a Cape Cod berm type height. So it's like a 3-inch change from the road edge to the top of the curb. And it's seen here in this photo being installed at a roundabout. It's typically installed for truck aprons at roundabouts so that those vehicles can easily get up and over them. So we're thinking it's a good application for the north side where people might need to exit the road to let an emergency vehicle through, delivery vehicles, any kind of use where they might need to pull off the road. And then in that space to the left of the T100 curb, we have the area for the reinforced turf grass. And so that's that kind of making up that horizontal distance. It's going to be a variable width between the edge of the road and where the sidewalk is. The sidewalk is going to roughly be at the property lines. So there's some space to kind of make up the difference there. Some more details on the grass, reinforced turf grass. One option that the town has used is the Grass Pave 2 system. It's a plastic, essentially circular pattern that gets installed. It can be cut in various shapes and laid out as needed to fit a space. It allows, I think it's essentially full grass build out to come through in the kind of the fully constructed state. It's a, low maintenance, reliable, should support anything up to a fire truck. So fairly good look at this early thought on what we could do in that space. Again, anything that is proposed has to be kind of vetted through Mass DOT. So we haven't presented this specific option to them yet. This is just one we're thinking of. For the enhanced crosswalk signage, this is a flashing beacon. This is actually installed 2 minutes down the road from my house. So I use this almost daily. It's a almost similar village area, to be honest, to the Yarmouthport Village. But it's I think a good contextual fit for what it does. So this is a solar powered pedestrian called flasher that goes off for 10 seconds or so after it's called, and then it goes dark again to alert vehicles that someone's looking to use that crosswalk. It's provided in both directions simultaneously. So once you call it, it's going to get drivers' attention going in both directions. Some lighting samples we're considering, looking for that kind of historic look, not too modern. There's a number of different options for kind of the post-top style lanterns. And again, these are in that, 10 to 12 to 14 foot height range. A lot depends on which manufacturer is selected ultimately. But we do have control over that. I think I zoomed the wrong way. Apologies. No, I'm still going the wrong way. This is another option for lighting. So these are light bollards, which are kind of just just what the name says, it's a light inside a bollard. They can sort of tend to match the period style lighting that we might look to implement in the village. Another option is a wood bollard. It's a little more modern looking, but it still has that kind of natural feel to it. Sidewalk materials. We've talked to date about the potential for brick, concrete, asphalt, pavers. We sort of tend to be leaning towards either brick or concrete at this point. With concrete, we've added this kind of palette of different colors that you can have added to the concrete mix to have a different, finish treatment color than just the standard gray. So there's options out there for kind of color matching to certain, any colors we would like really on that range. This is a built example in Dennisport of a recent project that Mass DOT constructed with a brick sidewalk, cement concrete, pedestrian curb ramps. The crosswalk is kind of a paved, stamped brick pattern in the roadway, so it tends to match the brick sidewalk, and then some of that pedestrian scale lighting. This is a standard crosswalk signage too. This is not any kind of flashing crosswalk sign here. Next few slides, we're going to jump into some photo simulations on the ground, looking down to the east from Sandy Side Lane. This first one shows a standard crosswalk signage with that stamped brick pavement pattern on the crosswalk. And it shows a traditional kind of concrete sidewalk installation. The T100 granite curbing, it gives a rough approximation of the height of that curbing on the left. On the right, you don't quite get a good view of it, but there's granite curbing, the antique granite curbing to support the parking and the sidewalk. This is that same exact image, just with a different kind of color option for the concrete, a bit more of a sand color finished. This is the rapid flashing beacon crosswalk options. What it will look like height-wise, context-wise among the lights. It's about the same height as the light poles, so it's not really a, standout kind of feature from at least a height perspective. Again, toggling the sidewalk color from gray to sand. Also, crosswalk options here. This is a continental style crosswalk. So this is an option instead of that stamped red, you could do a traditional white crosswalk. Jumping down to the east end to Minden Lane for an aerial look at the improvements. This is today. This is with the brick sidewalk option. And whatever sidewalk treatment kind of we pick, we'll have that color differentiation between the pavement at the parking for the businesses at Minden Lane. This probably gives you the best look at what we're thinking for improving kind of the drive aisle of Minden Lane. So there's like a defined edge on the left and right via some striping. The crosswalk is the new crosswalk location in front of the Lighthouse Keeper's Pantry. Cement concrete curb ramps, lighting on either side of the crosswalk to kind of give people a nice lit area to cross. And then lastly, this is just that same build out with the concrete sidewalk option. So you can kind of mix and match these components as we go here, but this is just kind of giving a visual of what the finished product will look like if you choose one material over the other. Cost-wise, for a Mass DOT tip-funded project, we're looking at in the range of $2.7 million in today's dollars. So that's going to go up slightly with inflation and things like that as the project design moves along in time. This is going to include resurfacing the road pavement, reconstructing the sidewalks, constructing the edge treatments, the curbing, the T100 curbing, the lighting improvements, whatever scope we decide that'll be, the crosswalk improvements, so curb ramps, striping, whatever treatment we decide to do for enhancing the crosswalk signage, and then underground, the drainage improvements. Those dollars would be part of that $2.7 million estimate. For design cost, the town has already started to fund the design through the act at the special town meeting. So that's underway. That'll get you to up to the first design submission. the full design submission. There'll be partial submissions to Mass DOT as we go along here. We'll see on the next slide. And then it's possible the state could cover costs at a certain point in the design, either after the pre-25% level or once we get to a 25% submission. So we're hopeful for that. For any utility relocations, this project doesn't seem to have a lot of poles that are in the way of anything, but we're going to look at that internally and with Mass DOT. Sometimes they like to tend to align guy wires at property lines, so they're kind of not in the way of anyone's frontage directly. So we'll see how that goes as the design develops, but that cost is kind of baked into the state coverage of the construction. For next steps, we are going to start the project initiation with Mass DOT, which means we go to a scoping meeting with them. Before we do that, we're going to get some additional survey done, which will be done by VHB to kind of update the survey along the roadway. We'll do a little more design work and refining the design, and then we'll meet with Mass DOT and talk to them about what elements they want to see going into ultimately the 25% design submission. Then we take that feedback and we put it into a pre-25% design submission, which gives everybody one more chance to give some feedback on the full package of the submission. At this point, we're targeting the fall of this year for going to that pre-25% submission stage. And then overall, this is a long-term project. It's going to be at least a 5-year horizon before we get to being ready for construction bidding. So we're going to go through a number of submission stages with Mass DOT review at each one, 25% through final, which we also call PS&E. And then once you get through that, you can go to bid, to solicit bids that the state would handle. For right-of-way, it's way too early to tell if any permanent or temporary easements are needed at this point. I think we know at least some properties might have temporary easements on them for just grading tie-ins behind the sidewalk. But any of those easements would be acquired by the state. So they would run the program on that. And that is all I had as part of the main program. So happy to take questions. We're going to just pass the mic around so everybody online can hear.
Yes, I'm Ann Hill. I live on Willow Street. I was wondering, as a newcomer, relative newcomer, why the parking lots behind some of the businesses cannot be used for public parking. I was thinking how nice it would be to have a sign saying, park over there off the street. And I'm sure you all here know why that's a problem, but I don't.
Kathy, can you speak to a little bit about the history of that, if that's been allowed by kind
All of
of...
that parking behind there. I'm not sure. No. All of that parking behind there is private, so it would be something where we can help with signage within the public way of saying parking in the rear. I think a lot of people don't necessarily know of that large volume of parking in the rear, so maybe getting people aware of it, having a consistent sign so people see the sign, they know there's parking in the back. And then maybe the businesses working together to see if they can't somehow combine and get access in between the parking lots. There had been a history where there was a connection for the parking lot to Inaho and the parking lot to Jack's Outback, because they seem to have different parking needs. One's more during the day and lunchtime and the other's in the evening. But, there's liability concerns and things that would need to be worked out. But hopefully that's something that the business community could work together on and allow for that. But we're kind of concentrating on what's happening in the streetscape itself.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
I'll ask the big question. Is there any way to speed this up?
No.
Yeah, within
yes.
the limits.
There are ways. So this project has the benefit of being a relatively low dollar value project compared to other TIP projects that it has to kind of find a spot with on the regional program of construction projects across the Cape that get built. What that means is that there are potential opportunities to advance that kind of 5-year estimate if a spot is identified that has funding in a certain earlier year that this project can kind of slot into. To do that, you have to kind of get DOT's okay to combine a few of the submissions I listed, but I think they'd be willing to kind of consider that to help out kind of speed this up if that opportunity presented itself.
When you say the submissions you listed, what are you referencing?
So there's 4 major design submissions, 25, 75, 100, and PS&E.
We need to combine some of those?
Potentially, yeah. So it's on certain projects, DOT is okay with it. It kind of depends what their initial look at the project is at the 25% review stage. But you can potentially combine a 75 and a 100, or a 100% and that final submission could be joint submission. I've done both on other projects, so that's kind of where you can save time. But I can't guarantee it's going to happen. It's just a potential.
Hi, I live on North Sandyside Lane, so I'm often crossing 6A, and my concern for the many years we've been discussing this is safety, and I'm wondering if that gives our project any priority with the state.
The safety is certainly a factor when the project was reviewed for eligibility for federal and state funding, so that helped. I think the reviewers would find that the existing features were frankly inadequate, and so any improvements were really needed. So that it would have helped the project score well from a kind of safety improvement perspective. It doesn't. Once it's scored and it's in the system, it's kind of going on its track with the reviews. So I wish I could go faster, but yeah, but it still was the kind of the current where we're at today versus where we're going or want to go is still helpful in getting this project to where it is today.
Curious about personal land taking and trees, existing trees. I know you haven't done the survey yet, but what do we know about having to take personal land and trees?
For trees, it is a bit early to say, but I believe most of the design can work around the existing street trees that are out there. It's going to come down sometimes to a construction decision as we get closer to the final design to determine whether trees can be kept that are within the state highway layout and the public shade trees. Most of this design is, targeting to work within the existing public way. So the sidewalk itself, I would say 99% of that right now off the top of my head is going to be within the public way. Any temporary easements, the state's program is they go away after 5 years. It's just a action that's needed for the contractor to be able to actually make the improvements. So they may go on to property by, a few feet here or there, but there shouldn't be any like large scale, property impacts for the plan that we're currently envisioning, I'll say.
I think there's 2 parcels there kind of in front of, just to the west of Lighthouse Keepers, where we're hoping to get a couple additional on-street parking spaces. So there might be a small permanent easement that would be needed for there.
For the sidewalk,
for the
to keep the sidewalk back, to allow the parking to go in.
Correct.
Yep.
A couple of comments and questions. Paul Orvis, I live on 99-6A. One, I like the grass thing on the north side there. Whose responsibility is it to maintain that as far as cutting the grass and
Don't know the answer about who currently cuts the grass.
that's going to be important to figure out.
You need to talk into a mic, I'm sorry. People can't hear you at home. We can hear each other here, but not at home.
As part of our discussions with Mass DOT, of course, one of the big things that's come up is maintenance. Currently, it's Mass DOT's responsibility to trim, to mow. This is Route 6A, it's a state road. But going forward, we know that they're already interested in assigning that maintenance to whatever's approved here to the town. So we still have some discussions about that, but it's very likely that this improved corridor, they're going to look for a maintenance agreement with the town.
Makes sense, I think. Other questions? Or just a comment on the crosswalk out in front of the urology association. It seems to me that there is traffic coming in and out of urology.
That microphone just turned off? No, the audience microphone? Someone press a button or something? Is the light on?
It's blinking red.
Don't know why this one. Can you use the wired mics in the interim while I try to figure out this problem out? I've never ran into it before. Yeah.
So we just need to use one of the wired mics. I think what's going to have to happen is people might have to come up to the podium, and they'll have to talk into this mic so that everyone at home can hear and we can record. So sorry.
So my second comment was about the interchange with crosswalk in front of Urology Associates. During the daytime, there is a fair amount of traffic in and out of that parking lot. And it seems to me if you went to the right there and closer to Hallett's in that direction, it meets your objective with fewer car interchanges and things like that. So I would think that might be a smarter thing. And it's also tied to the place where the retail really is, whereas points to the left there are not usually foot traffic types of things other than residents. The last question I think is more for Kathleen. In between now and 2030, maybe sooner, what happens to the roadway and the pipe construction and things like that? I yield the mic.
I guess I'm a little unclear on the. How's that? I'm a little unclear on the question. You mean what happens to the road in between?
Now it's just,
With the water.
where they put the gas pipes in.
Oh, yeah, we still have a water project that's being done, and maybe Steve can mention that. I know that the National Grid came through and they had the gas lines that went in, but I don't know the status of the water line.
Yeah.
It's good to get those things done ahead of time before we come in with our streetscape improvements.
Yep. Yeah, the waterline project we're working on, it's going to be going into bid this summer. And then once that project is done, the state asked for a, believe, full width mill and overlay of Route 6A. So that'll cover the whole project limits of this project and beyond, because the waterline project goes to the Barnstable town line. So you will get a refreshed pavement surface within that, before that 5-year period is up.
And just before that, if we could just do the couple of the Zoom, there seems like 3 people are just raising their hand. If we could allow Susan to ask her question, that would be great. You can stay. They keep adding up. Susan, are you able to unmute?
I think he may need to authorize her to speak. Gabriel? Yeah, that looks
All right, you should be all set to unmute now. Thank you.
Oh, great. I want to congratulate this whole process and Kathy and team. It looks really like it's so close to go. I wish it was happening faster, but it looks great. And my one input is I think it would be great to go with the brick colored sidewalks, not the concrete. So that's my one input. Thanks.
Yeah, that would be really good to get input from you guys on the sidewalk colors, and also any input you have on the pedestrian lighting, and then the whole idea of maybe having bollards, those smaller lights that might look more like hitching posts, whether that's something you're interested in, or just having more decorative lighting along the whole way. So any input like that would be great to hear from people.
Which one is it?
This one.
This one? I'm Rick Banaco. I live on Vesper Lane. I wrote a letter to the selectmen about recently. A few weeks ago, I was walking up 6A. And the children who were in the nursery school were walking on the north side of the street, and it had rained, and it was across from the lighthouse keeper's shop there. The teachers were out in the road while the children were holding a rope. The children were almost in the street, and my heart was in my throat because I really thought somebody was going to get hit. So one of the questions I would have is the maintenance of that road. I don't care who does it. I don't care who's responsible for it. I think it's the responsibility of the town to make sure if the state is supposed to be doing it, that the state does it. And if the state doesn't do it, we have to do it. But there's no question that that area of road along 6A is the poorest maintained area of 6A on the Cape. There's no question about it. There's telephone poles that have chunks taken out of them and look like they're ready to fall down and being supported. This project has been going on for 12 years. I wrote a letter. I started this project. The last time I spoke, I was rude. I was told I was rude by the town administrator because I was frustrated, and I was going on just as I'm going on right now. But 12 years, I don't know how many studies, whether it's been 2, 3, 4 studies. I'm curious as to how much money we've spent on studies. And we've gone nowhere. We've got nothing. The safety aspects, the 1990 American Disability Acts clearly state that the liability of sidewalks and crosswalks possibly are the town, not the state. And the sidewalks, although I keep hearing that the sidewalks are part of the state, I don't know if I believe that. I think it is the responsibility and the liability falls to the town should somebody get hurt. The woman down the street, 2 houses down from me, fell last year. She's 85 or 6 years old, and she was injured. She got home, and I said, Nancy, you should call the town about it, because and she didn't. She did not call. But I've seen people. The new crosswalk between Vesper Lane and Willow and Wharf Street that they put in, and I guess the Department of Transportation put in, you take your life into your hands. People coming down Willow Street and making a right, or somebody on 6A going towards Willow Street and making a left, are looking at where they're going to make the turn and not at any pedestrian walking along. So whoever planned that crosswalk sure as hell didn't plan on identifying it substantially or correctly, because you take your life in your hand making that cross. Anyway, the frustration level is extremely high. I don't think I'll live to see the project completed. And it's only a betterment of the community. It's for the community. It's safety is the number one thing. Quality of life. Anyway, I've talked too much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to just switch gears to the Zoom. If you could promote Christopher. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, hi. Yes, first, thank you for the presentation. It looks really good, and the wider sidewalks and promote pedestrian safety. My question echoes the previous gentleman's. When I drive to the village, I take Willow Street and turn right, because the shop's on the right side of the street. As I'm heading, you're on the south side of the street, it's easier to park. So with the anticipated business traffic that may be produced by the improvements, is there any contemplation of modernizing the Willow Street intersection? Because where the old Christmas tree is, making a right turn or even a left turn is extremely dangerous because of cars are coming pretty fast. Yeah. And just for safety, I guess cars will, you want them to slow down as they approach the village. But that's my question. It's the vehicle safety there. But again, thank you for the plan. I think it looks really good.
Thank you. I think with regard to Willow Street, that is a project unto itself. It's a very sharp curve there. The sight distances are very poor, and in order to really create the additional sight distance and soften that curve, you would be really impacting those businesses on the corner, or you would be putting up some type of signal, which I don't believe there's any signals on 6A. So that's something certainly to look at. And I know that the Union Street Route 6A intersection is also one that can be very difficult to take left-hand turns on. So those would have to be separate projects. And I'm sorry, it does seem to take a long time, but it took us a long time to kind of build consensus among the community so that we actually had a defined project that we felt good about, that was meeting all of the, trying to address all the functional issues that are out there and fully understanding them, but then trying to address them, but then trying to, again, not overdo it and make it look like we've heard Quincy or some other places, but really make it still look like Route 6A in Yarmouthport.
Thank you.
If someone from the audience would like to step up, you're welcome.
This is going to be easy. My name's Kathleen Lucas. I love the red pavers, or not red pavers, the brick. But I always worry when I see those as I'm other towns and you see the one brick up or whatever and it starts to get crummy. So I sort of tend to go for the sand, whatever. And the other, I have a question about the road. Is it going to be paved in a red color, kind of?
No, I think
it's just
the
the
rendering
way-
showed it like it's kind of had a little bit of a red
Yeah.
tint, but no.
I like the lower beacons, if they can be, if they do give light to cars coming down, so.
The bollards, those would really be just pedestrian level for the people on the sidewalk, not for the road. But I think that the detail of how those brick sidewalks get constructed is very different than the ones that you see. My daughter has an apartment in Beacon Hill, and you will kill yourself trying to walk on those sidewalks. But there's a whole base, a concrete base that gets poured underneath so that when you put the bricks in, it all stays safe, stable. I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, no, that's correct. The photo I showed in Dennisport is of that kind of modernized brick installation, and the state is very happy with the way that came out. So if we lean towards brick sidewalk, that'll be what we do. They've already decided that. They haven't decided on the material, but if we do brick, it'll be a solid installation of brick.
All right, if we could promote Sarah from Zoom. All right, Sarah, you can unmute.
My name's Sarah Porter. I've lived in Yarmouthport for 40 years, 20 of those years in the Thatcher House across from the post office. I understand that this is a big project for the state and the town, sort of. I'm wondering though, since so many people have brought up the issue of the speed along that stretch of road, which is actually higher than it is right at the post office, is the state and the town considering, or is the town considering asking the state to lower the speed limit? At least in the meantime, it doesn't sound like that would be such a big deal. Maybe it is. And also, is there any way that a temporary crosswalk could be painted in, or at least some sort of barriers along the sidewalk to show that the crosswalk is there to help people at least be aware that they're there? I also disagree about the crosswalk and sidewalk colors, but that's a discussion for another day. I'm mostly concerned about the speed limit and the possibility of doing something temporary for a crosswalk by the Lighthouse Keepers Pantry. Thank you. And thank you for this project too. It's great.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for joining us. Sarah's on my design review committee. With regard to the speed, I think one of the things that Mass DOT has said is that they would look at lowering the speeds within the village as part of, in conjunction with physical improvements to the village. I think as you start making these improvements, instinctually people will see this as being more of a pedestrian-oriented area, and they will naturally slow down. I think maybe something that could be done temporarily, I know someone wanted this done permanently, and one of the comments was having those electronic speed detectors on both ends of the village, because I know that when I go along and I see it, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, didn't know I was quite going that fast, and I think people naturally slow down when they see that. So that might be something that can be done on a temporary, or not temporary, but short-term basis. And then I don't know about the crosswalk at Lighthouse Keepers, whether that's something that we could ask Mass DOT to put in temporarily. I'd defer to Steve or Jeff on that.
We may be able to look at adding that as part of the water line project,
Oh, good point.
but it would definitely be a redo in the final design, I think, because of the way everything's changing. So, but yeah, we could consider that.
All right, someone from the audience like to come up?
I would also like to support the red crosswalks. I find that the striped ones get worn off by cars, and that's one fewer thing for drivers to be aware of. I think we need a real visual indication of a difference between that crosswalk and the roadway.
Hi, my name is Ed Hagano. I live on Gingerbread Lane. Quick question I had for you, Stephen, was when I walk on Main Street, the north side of the road, I always see the mailman, who I like, drive up on the curb to put the mail in, and he leaves ruts in the grass when he pulls away. I don't know how you're going to get around that. You know, I'm not putting him down, but I don't know if there's a better way for him to deliver the mail. You know what I'm saying? When he drives off.
Yep.
And
Do you have a mailbox, or does he need to walk up to the property?
Mailbox is usually on the shrubs.
Yeah.
On the northernmost side of the sidewalk.
Yep. It's possible that we could, it's part of the project with Mass DOT, move any mailboxes there to the road edge, so they wouldn't have to do that.
I was just wondering, because you said a 3-inch, looking at this picture, you said a 3-inch granite. I don't know if that's high enough.
It shouldn't be too bad for like a mail truck to drive up it.
I don't want them to.
Well, part of it is you have the reinforced grass for part of it. That's not everywhere, but that's part of it. But I think we have enough kind of tools in the kit that we can think about that, with either a combination of moving mailboxes out or putting in some infrastructure they can drive over without damaging and running up the grass.
I know about that plastic hexagon that you were talking about. It works great, but I didn't know if you would do that to everybody's mailbox. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a definite stretch we're looking at doing it where you have the width to put it in. But yeah, we will probably have to look at each grass strip and kind of think about that to make sure the grass doesn't get just destroyed.
I just see it all the time, and I'm like, I'd be furious if I was the homeowner and see my lawn ripped up every other day.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
There's actually one mailbox called out for being relocated there.
I have one note there, yep.
All right, if we could promote Rebecca. All right, Rebecca, you're welcome to unmute.
Hi there, thank you. Rebecca Panabianco, resident on Menden Lane. Just wanted to share that we are really excited about this project. Kathy, thank you so much for the hard work, and thank you for them, the developers coming out 4 full times to talk about this. I think we just wanted to share kind of aesthetically, I really like the idea of that supported brick on the walkways, assuming that the integrity is the same as what a concrete, kind of surface would be. And the idea of adding bollards and lighting and seating, I think would really add to the charm of the village. Personally don't love the wood bollard. It feels extremely modern, but the others looked lovely. So yeah, just really excited about the project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right, you're welcome to step up.
I wanted to check on an earlier one. I was one of the people called out with the mailbox, 152 Route 6A. I didn't know if I still was, because to the earlier point, yeah, my front yard does not look good, and I gave up trying to keep it alive.
Yep.
But I didn't know if it was still in the current plans that moves forward.
To be honest, we haven't looked at every individual property yet, but that'll be part of kind of the first design stage. We'll look at that and propose moving the ones up that we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because again, it was called out in the last one.
Yep.
And I would definitely love that. I think it would help reduce people using it as the U-turn area.
Yeah.
And then aside of that, I would, perfection being the enemy of the good, I'll go along with whatever, but my own vote would be for the red brick sidewalks. And then the more vintage, the taller lighting, I guess maybe black, because that's the only color you can do at Old Kings Highway without having to go before them and get approval. So that's my vote.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cindy Ecker, and I live on Thatcher Shore Road. I'm very excited about improving the safety in the village, and I think having a contrast look on the crosswalks and the sidewalk will really enhance them. And I'm curious, I know that Steve mentioned colored stamped concrete. So doing that in, say, a red, I'm wondering how the maintenance of that versus brick, how that would compare, if it would be less maintenance. And someone expressed a concern about the brick cracking and sinking and becoming not level. So I'm wondering if stamped concrete or stamped asphalt colored red might be something that would be less of a maintenance issue. Excuse me. Secondly, I am personally not in favor of bollards. I would prefer streetlights. So I just want to get that out there. Thank you.
Thanks. There's a few different brick or improvising brick surfaces we're talking about tonight. So starting with the sidewalk, it's a true brick that gets installed on a sand bed over a concrete base. That has proved to be very resilient in Dennisport. And so you'd be comparing that to a paver sidewalk, which may have a different installation method below it. I think we would have to look at that and see if that felt like a good swap. On the other brick materials we're talking about tonight, it's the stamped asphalt that looks like brick, which is red colored. And then so the question there is that more durable than traditional white crosswalk striping? So that's proposed for both. That could be used at both crosswalks and at those parking bump outs, which ideally wouldn't be driven over a lot. Crosswalks would be driven over a lot. The stamped treatment eventually wears, so it does have some upkeep to it, but it has a pretty good kind of visual pop to help kind of draw attention to the main purpose of it is, to draw attention to the fact that there's a crosswalk there.
Hi, I'm Lori Larson. I live at 256 Route 6A in Yarmouthport. I am 100% in favor of 0 trees being removed, period. If you look at historic pictures of Yarmouthport, you can pretty much picture all of those gorgeous trees, and we cannot afford to lose any of them. I have a quick question that was just a curiosity. Why would we have 6-foot sidewalks on the north side when there's 5-foot sidewalks on the south side proposed?
Right now, the north side is proposed for 5-foot wide sidewalks. And we could go wider to match the width. That's a design detail that we can still work out. But typically, the 5-foot width is wide enough when its sidewalk is separated from the road edge itself. So that's what we have on the north side. On the south side, we have 6 feet because it's next to the parking and next to the curb. So you want a little more width just to kind of have a separate zone for doors to open, people to get out and things like that.
Okay. Another thing that I would like to mention is that I'm pretty fastidious about taking care of my grass strip in front of my home. And I'm actually pretty helpful taking care of the grass strip in front of the Winslow Crocker House, and pretty much do a lot of work in that area, especially on Earth Day. And if you drive up and down Route 6A and you look at the grass strips in front of most places, frankly, they're not very well maintained, even by the people who live there. So if there is going to be grass strips, I would really love to know who would be in charge of caring for them. And I don't think that we can count on the state to do that because they're not doing it now. So I think that what we really need to do is figure out a way in which that can be maintained nicely.
I think as Jeff Colby mentioned, that Mass DOT will probably require some type of maintenance agreement with the town for certain elements that we want, like the grass areas, as well as probably if we want to have those stamped asphalt concrete crosswalks, we would probably be responsible for maintaining those. I know that we do different things with sidewalks also on Route 6A. So that's probably be something that would fall to the town. But I really like your idea of stewarding that area in front of your home, and it would be great if different businesses could say, you know, it's a couple extra runs of the lawnmower to get that strip done and make it look at least just clean cut. So anything that the residents can do to help out the town with that would be very much appreciated.
I think it might be wishful thinking.
Well, you do it, so.
From my experience. And then I have one last question here. Are there any police officers in the room tonight? No? Today, and it's happened before, but I have to mention it, I'm driving down 6A, and there's a bunch of cars that are stopped in front of me, and I'm wondering what they're going around. FedEx truck stopped right on 6A, not pulled over, stopped without their flashers on to make a delivery to someone on the south side. Stopped.
There's a new guy who's been doing that.
I mean, it was utterly ridiculous. So I thought maybe that could be something that we could field by police officers who, I don't think it's really a good idea for them to stop in the middle of the road.
Is this a new phenomenon?
Yeah.
Okay.
I noticed it too. It's right in the middle of the road.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Curious if the non-maintained utilities could possibly be put underground during this project? Big cost item, I know, but I mean, it's the beginning.
Years
It's
from
the
now, we'll
beginning,
get
right?
the project done. I think I'll let Steve talk about that with regard to the cost. But it's very time consuming. There's a lot of issues that go along with it, as well as being extremely expensive. So
Yeah.
This would be the time to do it.
agreed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think from a cost to benefit angle, it's better to have a kind of more programmatic stretch of the road done than just the limit that we're talking about for this project. Anything can be done. The utility companies are willing to take checks from anyone to move their lines around. But I just think it's very cost prohibitive for the scale of this project, with the path this project is going on, with Mass DOT funding, to also make an ask for that to be part of the project itself. Yeah, it would look a lot better. Definitely can see that, but I think it's a little bit beyond the scope of the project as is currently envisioned.
And I think just to also add is that what's already buried underneath the pavement is very congested. We talked about drainage. We're talking about adding drainage. We're talking about a new water main. You'll have the abandoned old water main, the old gas main, and now a new gas main. So having all those utilities makes it very challenging. And there's a buried Verizon too, right?
I think there's
Duck bank
Verizon, yeah.
that goes through that stretch. So again, it's already a very congested corridor, and there's not a large right of way for that.
Hi. So I have a question. I know in Barnstable you have the speed bumps, and that's because it's owned by the town. Was that something that would be proposed here as well? Because it would be nice to lower the speed. And then with the sidewalks, I would be one for I guess the concrete or the asphalt, because what's going to happen when the end of this project and then the sidewalk continues? So it would be kind of awkward to go from a brick to the pavement, and I don't like the wood ballard either.
Thank you. Yeah, as far as where things stand with the ownership of the road, I don't believe the town has any interest in taking on ownership. And essentially what that leaves is that the state continues to maintain the pavement. So with that kind of path going forward, the state wouldn't allow any speed tables to be installed. Just their policy on those.
I also think police and fire don't like them either, because it slows them down, and then it also seems like a challenge for some others who want to go fast and see what they can do with them. So there's some good, and then there's some bad that can come with those.
Are there any more questions from the audience? I'll come up.
I'll just chime in to say that I think that having something that's textured in the crosswalk is a physical reminder, like a rumble strip on the highway. When you kind of leave the highway, it just reminds you that you're leaving it. In this case, even if the lights aren't flashing, if you're going over something that kind of gives you a little bit of stimulus, I think that helps people to recognize that they're coming into an area where they should be more alert than they might be. Also, I think that it's I would advocate for contrast. Some of the illustrations you showed some tan treatments for the sidewalks and things like that, and I think having something that's visually distinctive from the roadway that says this is a sidewalk, this is a road, and it's easier just to observe that and see it, I think would be helpful. I'm challenged to understand where the ballards would go and where the lighting would go, but I think one of the initial concepts that we had was that we talked about anyway was putting the pedestrian level lighting, low profile type of thing at the crosswalks themselves, even if they weren't illuminated with the flashers. And then I hadn't really had a chance to think about what a ballard might look like or where it would go, but if you did that in between or on the other side of the road or whatever to without overdeveloping the either side of the street, give anybody coming through there, particularly at night, the ability to recognize that they're coming into a village, and not putting a speed bump in there, which probably causes accidents and things itself, but just giving you that, here's your notification type of thing. And I think we've talked about all this stuff, and part of the reasons that we're here is because the original concepts talked about coming from Station Avenue type of thing all the way down to Willow Street and everything, and we couldn't come to consensus. The only thing that I thought that was a consensus was the comment about the trees, and that's a strong preference for almost everybody here, but there will be sacrifices, I'm sure, and then we'll have to address those, but we got down to this little narrow strip of land because it's probably the most critical thing. We talked about Summer Street and crossing over that and the width of that intersection, and how we do it. And we were just slowing ourselves down with things. And so here we are. I'm all for all this stuff. Everything sounds like it's great, and I encourage the ongoing communications.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, come on up.
I would just ask that if there's anything that you need in order to combine some of the percentages so that this could move faster, I would hope you would address this crowd tonight and say, I need to know this so that we can move faster.
I think that the general layout is what was the key thing, having the parking on the south and kind of identifying what the travel lane widths are going to be, what the parking is. Now I think we need to kind of finalize kind of maybe like where the crosswalk is. That's one of the big physical things that really hasn't been set. We've heard people say, some people had indicated about possibly moving it further to the west. When you see the plan where you kind of show, well, it's very close to the one that's in Vesper. What I'm hearing tonight is maybe we're kind of keeping that in its existing location near Sandy side, so that's good information to know. Little details with regard to the sidewalk as we move forward and talk to Mass DOT. We want, as much as we can, to start figuring out those things and figuring out locations for where we want to have the pedestrian light, because that all adds up into the cost estimate, which they're interested in knowing as you're moving forward with the things. So I think as we move after we have the meeting with Mass DOT for kind of like the over-the-shoulder one, we'll have a much better understanding of, we'll show them all these different options and kind of say, do you have any issues with any of these? And if they don't, then it's really a local decision, and we can kind of finalize some of those things and then kind of let you guys know at the pre-25% design phase what we're looking at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we have all the information we need now to go to Mass DOT and start discussing the kind of the program with them, or continue. We've had meetings with them, but just continue it.
Yeah, go for it.
In the interest of keeping it moving, I would say you've gotten a lot of input through the many meetings that we may trust you to move ahead and not feel like we have to keep gathering groups to discuss all these details. I trust that you all will make the right decision visually and safety-wise for us. I hope other people feel likewise.
Thank you. Appreciate the confidence. Isn't anybody on remote or? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all again. This was a lot of good information. If anyone has any comments, you're certainly welcome to send me an email. Yeah, you all know my email address by now. Thank you so much.